go. Let's get some game sound, and be patient with me for a moment while I get everything timed up at the same time. But we'll get the racers synced in just a second. So I'm gonna give Yogi a quick pause.
So we just had a pretty great race from the Sabin and Elmagus. Both of them finished pretty close to each other, and going off of both of our current runners' PB, hopefully we'll have an equally close race.
I definitely believe it, and have faith for such a close race. No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so of course we have both of our runners attempting to run away and soak all the XP onto Terra, but it looks like Yogi did not get our two soldiers to run away. So unfortunately, that's going to be a little harmful to him. He's going to have to grind a few extra fights to make sure Terra gets all the way to level 6 before meeting Locke.
And that is certainly not ideal, but unfortunately one of those things which can happen, especially in that first fight. Plus, you always have to worry about race nerves, especially because this is the first race for any of our runners in this tournament. So some people are new to it, though I don't think either of these runners are particularly new to tournaments.
Oh, yes, I've seen both of these runners.
Yeah.
Participate in a number of tournaments.
So definitely doing some precise stepping as well, dodging one of the encounters.
Yeah, that's something that I fail to mention often because after running the game for a while, I just forget there is two encounters actually by stepping on a particular encounter or a tile. You have two Lobos, and then immediately after that, 2 guards. Not something you wanna do in a race. It does give you a little bit of extra XP, but it's definitely not worth the time.
No, not at all.
So by Yogi unfortunately not running away on the first fight, it should take him 2 extra fights to get Terra to level 6. Not the worst thing ever. It's probably going to add about a minute, and it's going to affect what encounters he gets to for the first 40 or so minutes of the run. You might see some dark winds instead of single I forgot the bunny encounters that you get into at the very start of the game.
The Leafers.
The Leafers. I was like, Rabbit, wait a second. It's not Rabbits. That's the wrong game.
Yeah, you're like, never forget the rabbits, guys. Never.
So let's see if both of our runners are able to perform the quick kill on Welk. A tactic, a mechanic that you'll see pretty much all the runners try to do is to perform weight tricking on certain fights. And by performing weight tricking in this particular fight, in a particular way, you're going to be able to stall Welk a little bit, long enough so that Terra is able to sneak in 3 tech missiles onto the head before the head is able to sneak into the shell.
This is definitely much faster than the Welk going into the shell because he's just on a timer at that point, so you have to wait for him to come back out, and let me tell you, nobody got time for that.
Looks like Yogi was able to perform the quick kill, but unfortunately, we did not see that on the other side. So it takes about 30 seconds or so if you didn't perform the quick kill, but really unfortunately, the Megavolt killed off Terra. That's going to be really unfortunate. This is going to be particularly a bad situation. Not over
yet. So he can do making sure to do that safety heal, because that is far more important than the speed at this point, because he will lose far more time by just dying to that fight. So, that is unfortunate, and it's one of the reasons we try and get the quick kill, because if you are off just a little bit on the quick kill, you saw the result. The fight can go very, very wrong.
So we have to get around about 500 damage more on Welk's head before the fight is over. Normally 3 tech missiles does the trick, but if you only get 2, Welk has 1600 HP, tech missiles tend to do about 530 to 550-ish. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, definitely not going to be the proudest fight of Riz's career, but the important thing is surviving it. There are plenty more chances to make up time in the rest of the run, so he's going to be playing it extra cautious, healing up likely between, or just making sure not to attack while the Welk is in its shell, because I'm not sure that he could survive a single party attack at this point.
And unfortunately, due to this line, you can only get about 1 turn in before the head decides to sink into the shell again. I had this actually happen to me the other night, so I haven't particularly
this week, but I was in a run once where I had a 7-turn Welk fight, so I've been there. Yeah, I think if anyone wasn't racing right here, they would have aborted this, because this is the worst case scenario. And again, sometimes it just happens. The just brutality of mistiming those attacks, and what happens when you get all of those counterattacks where you should have been attacking the Welk head is just, it cannot be overstated, like how terrible that is. In the meantime, Yogi is going through and getting all of his attacks, killing any enemies he comes across to continue with his experience routing. He needs to make sure to get Terra to level 6 before progressing in the plot. So where he is step routing, he will be able to make it all the way, hopefully, just before the cutscene, and then just has to farm a singular encounter, and he will be ready to go.
Well, he did miss off on a little bit of XP because
He did, yes.
Yes, so the first encounter, I think, cost him about 60 XP on Terra, so that should take 2 extra fights. So normally, yeah, you just need 1 extra encounter. In his case, because of a small mistake, he has to farm 3 now.
Right.
I believe I did the math on that correctly.
I will trust you on the math for that, because I'll be honest, I don't know the math for that. But yeah, so it is going to help Riz in catching up. But yes, he is, yeah, I'm sure if he had a camera on his stream, we would be seeing the sadness and tears. But he's got this. I have total faith. So I am...
should be the last beam he needs to get off.
Yeah, I hope so.
There we go.
Beautiful.
So that added, unfortunately, about 4 minutes to his time, but it's at the very start of a run. There's still about an hour and 20 minutes of this run left.
Yeah, and I think the question was asked, was it faster to do it this way? And I think in the long run it was.
Oh, yes, definitely, because it takes about 3 to 4 minutes in that situation, and it takes about that long just to be able to do the Welk fight from a reset, ignoring the fact that if you wanted to do the encounter manipulation, that takes about 10 minutes to set up. It's definitely not friendly if you're trying to do that in between, like if you try to do that off a reset, especially in the middle of a race. I can't think of any situation it would be faster to reset.
Yeah, exactly.
So on the right, we are meeting the main antagonist of this category, this game, Kefka. The whole purpose of the Kefka Narshe category is to just beat up Kefka in the Narshe battle. It takes about 90 minutes or so, depending on how practiced you are in the run.
Yeah, and for those asking, for the last run, the Magus won the last run, though it was really quite close. It was an excellent run to see. If you missed it, I recommend going back and checking out the VOD on RPG Limit Break.
Yeah, both the Sabin and Omegas are very good at Final Fantasy VI. So both of
Yeah.
them had a particularly good time. Just about a minute in between the two times. 125 something for Omegas and 126.02, I think, from the Sabin.
Yeah, exactly. It was very close. I actually still have that channel up.
So on Yogi the Monk's stream, we are meeting our favorite, not thief, treasure hunter, L.
If there had been room for it in his in the SNES game titles, I'm sure he would have been given the ability treasure hunt rather than steal, but alas, for character limits. Because he is very clear that he is not a thief, he is a treasure hunter. Riz now gonna walk through and get his levels, and again, you're just fighting all of the encounters as they come up and farming. He will only have to farm one encounter at the end, so that will help to equalize it a little bit.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Probably about 45 seconds or so, I would say.
Yeah.
Yogi the Monk had to spend getting those two extra encounters. And it might some of the encounters he gets later on might take a little bit longer to run away from. Like the Mount Colt section is going to be particularly interesting because he's not going to know exactly what encounters he's going to get because he had to take extra steps, and he's just going to end up in different encounters than he would be wanting. So we'll see how that plays out if ultimately Rislyeu can make up a little bit more time as the run goes on.
Absolutely. So what Yogi's doing here now is a type of battle which was introduced and I believe remains only in Final Fantasy VI, where it's a multi-party battle where the goal is to split your characters up into three parties, block off the paths of all of the enemies coming, fight them, and then once they're all defeated, going to the end and fighting the boss. But we don't have time for that. So in this case, we just take the pre-assembled party, which we know is best because it has Mog in it, who is a future player character, and we skip any of the monsters that we can, either just by being in a position where they don't walk, or by if you try and walk past them when they are still in a movement animation, then you can actually walk past them without triggering the encounter. So did that, fighting the Marshal. The big important thing about the Marshal fight is taking at least the Mithril Pike off of Mog, if at all possible, which occasionally it is not. And if you want it for safety, you can also remove the Mithril Shield.
So we steal equipment off of Mog, mostly if we want that pike for Edgar for the later fights. Mithril Pike is a particularly powerful weapon very early on in the game, and it will definitely help us out in the two boss fights that Edgar participates in.
Yeah, and that fight also introduces the most important Moogle in this run, Kutan.
General Kutan.
General Kutan. So Locke does manage, with the help of the Moogles, who he let handle it completely, to save Terra, and they will now be fleeing. So what you're going to notice when Yogi does get to the world map is that he should be taking some very particular steps. The reasoning for this is, as part of the step route, they are trying to step on as many no encounter tiles which exist on the world maps as possible, and there is a specific route for each of the maps in order to do that. So he's still going to want to do that, even though he's not as officially on step route as before, because again, no encounter tiles are still no encounter tiles.
Yeah, there's I believe two of those no encounter tiles where they don't advance the encounter threat. Before you get to South Figaro, they tend to be on the world map, being where you see the dark and the light grass meet. Any any sort of diagonal places where the light and dark grass meet. For whatever reason, those happen to be those no encounter tiles. And then there's going to be other tiles that are like event tiles, not typically found in the world map, but in like caves and dungeons and stuff like that. They're going to try to go out of their way to hit as well.
And this race is approximately an hour and a half to 2 hours long, though both of these runners have a personal best of approximately 127. So they're going to be closer to an hour and 30-minute range. So, and it does end as soon as Kefka runs away at the battle at Narshe. So that is as far as this run goes. Why it's duly named Kefka at Narshe.
So we see Rislyeu also sneaking past all these wolves and making his way over to the martial fight. Also, I imagine he should also be de-equipping the mithril pike. Unfortunately, Kupan happened to get netted by the martial, which is probably, apart from Mog, the second worst choice in terms of who gets netted, just because Kupan happens to do about 100 damage a hit as well.
Yeah, as much as we enjoy Cuckoo and especially General Kupan, Kupan is one of our big damage dealers next to Mog, so having him stopped is really unfortunate, but still better than Mog getting netted, so we will take it. And right now we have Yogi fighting the Figaro boss, which is just trying to navigate. You're lucky you don't have sprint shoes for Figaro, because it would make it even more difficult between all the stairs and tight turns. Thankfully, it doesn't affect step route if you're not taking particular routing, but it does lose you time, so it's definitely not something you enjoy at all.
Yeah, unlike other Final Fantasy games, the encounter threat only advances when you're actually in a place you can get encounters,
which is beautiful. It learned from its let's call them mistakes of Final Fantasy IV, where the step counter increases basically everywhere. Not everywhere, but more places than you would expect. So Figaro is really just a series of knowing where to go to trigger the next plot trigger. In this case, it was to speak with the matron in order to name Sabin, or S the first, which we will pick up. And then speaking to Edgar, talking to someone from the Empire, who is our ever delightful, wondrous, favorite final boss, Kefka. Let's see here. I'm gonna try and swap the music. Let's see how we go. There we go.
What's a good resource for learning this run? Well, we do have a Discord specifically for Kefka at Narshe, so we can organize this tournament. But there is a Final Fantasy VI Discord for the other categories, and if you go to speedrun.com, a lot of the information about Final Fantasy VI is posted in the guides section. There's a particularly great website that was put up that has not only guides for learning the runs, but also just hints and tricks, details on how certain mechanics work. Really great resource. I run the glitchless category for Final Fantasy VI, and I definitely use quite a bit of that.
Yeah, and of the two links which are posted in there in the Kefka Narshe blurb, the first one leads you to the tournament the tournament rules, and that also links you to a bunch of really great resources for learning it. So feel free to click on that and learn. Yeah, I gotta say, for a RPG speedrun, this is one of the easier ones to pick up and learn. So it's like any of these partial categories, it's not as long, and this is just a really great game for speedrunning that way, if you're new to speedruns in general, or RPG running specifically.
Yeah, I think the Kefka at Narshe is a really good category for Final Fantasy VI, because you actually get to see quite a bit of the mechanics used in the full runs. There's going to be certain things like for the sketch category, you're not going to see any sketch stuff in the short category, or you're not going to see stuff with Setzer and Joker Dooms, but the basics are all there. So if you learn this run, you can easily transfer that ability to any of the full category runs because for the most part, it's going to be a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah, which is anything which you can take from a short run and transfer into a longer run is really quite helpful because often the experience is you learn these shorter runs and find you want to transition into one of the longer categories, of which this game has multiple. So whether you like the longer glitchless category, the not quite so tricky no sketch category, or if you really like things to get messy with the sketch category.
Sketch is a particularly interesting glitch, but enough about the other categories. We have some action going on after this. Quite a bit of long cutscenes during Figaro. Has some about a fight to come up. Not the particularly hardest fight, but a fight nonetheless.
Absolutely, and because of some of the mechanics around this fight, it is really quite important to know how you're supposed to run it for speedrunning purposes. Because I'm sure for most of us who have casualed this game are familiar with a certain cutscene which plays if Terra does use magic in the next fight, and we are, for obvious speed reasons, looking to avoid that. So, but right now, due to Edgar's mechanical genius, the people of Figaro are saved from a potential fiery death and whatever such other things Kefka might want to send on them by going under the sand. So, this fight, as mentioned, is really quite easy. The important thing is to use the skills set that Edgar has, which is tools, and use the auto crossbow that he was given. It's going to be used quite a lot at for the beginning part of this run, making him really quite effective. 2 hits from the auto crossbow, and that's it. That fight is over.
Due to the way when a new character joins your party, their level tends to be based on the average party level, and then it gets like a level or 2 added onto it. So because of that, Edgar is particularly high level. So he's able to kind of carry us with the auto crossbow through the first bit of this run. Just by literally auto crossbowing everything to death, and you'll see in the next cave how particularly good it is.
Yes, he most certainly does. So, but Yogi has completed that fight, so we get some more cutscenes where Terra's worried that she's different than everybody else, and we continue our campaign, or the player characters continue their campaign to both convince Terra to join them without convincing Terra to join them. She has to make her own choice, they keep emphasizing, but you'll note they do keep trying to convince her. So, and after a short chocobo ride, they are off to the cave, which will lead them to the next town of South Figaro. And unlike many other games you'll see, where you just focus mostly on getting the player experience from bosses, bosses in this game do not get experience. So we have to do our experience routing by fighting certain specific enemies, and this cave is one such example. And another example of how the auto crossbow is very powerful, because with the exception of these blearies, it always will one-shot everything in here, and even the blearies usually get one shot, but you always make sure to attack with Edgar first, so if the damage rolls just don't work out quite right, then you have Terra and Locke on standby to just finish off any stragglers.
Something very, very small that I'm going to actually kind of keep an eye on to see if both of our runners are going to be doing. For whatever reason, at the end of a battle that you win in, you want to make sure that you don't have any characters menu up currently. for whatever reason, it takes about 5 frames to deload the character's menu and then bring up the victory. Like, congratulations, you won, the battle, the fanfare. 5 frames isn't a whole lot, but over the course of a whole run, especially one of the longer runs, it definitely will add up to be a fair number of seconds.
Yep, which is, and you want every one of those frames, let alone seconds. So, now after so long in the run, we now get the most important of speed tech, the sprint shoes. So this does increase our character's speed, and we're going to be making great use of them, picking up 3 pairs. We like them so much.
This game is literally pay to win.
Yeah, it is. Thankfully, we're paying with everybody else's money rather than our own. So, and that poor Chocobo guy, he just amuses me every time, because he's just like, hey, do you want to know how to ride a Chocobo? I'm not giving you an option, you're learning how to ride a Chocobo. He just wants to talk to you. Yeah, so we're going to be seeing encounters which usually you would not be seeing on Mount Colt, because Yogi is off step route, but the general strategy which I learned is don't fight anything inside, fight everything outside. And while that's not a particularly exact strategy, it usually pays off by the time you reach the boss at the end. And by the time you reach Vargas, you do need Edgar, Locke, and Terra to be levels 10, 9, and 8 respectively, to ensure that Sabin, who joins you next, joins at level 11, which is the level which he gets Aura Bolt, which we are going to use gratuitously. Also picking up the Atlas Armlet, which is then also immediately equipped onto Edgar to increase whichever stat it is, which makes his auto crossbow do more damage, which again, when you already have a powerful weapon, you want to make it stronger, because that's what you do, right?
So the main fights that I imagine Yogi is going to take here, now with the auto crossbow in hand, he should be able to kill the brawlers in one shot. Whereas before with the Atlas Armlet, they would take a little bit of extra time. It looks like he's trying to force an encounter. That should be the 4-pack he was hoping, I imagine, where you would do both an auto crossbow and then a fire on Terra. And you want to try to run away from Locke to even out the XP a little bit more, but he didn't get it there. Because he happens to be off step a little bit, the way the encounters work, the game decides what counters to give you based on not only what seed you're on, but over the course of the run, it's going to be counting the number of encounters that you get into. So you have encounter number 1, encounter number 2, encounter number 3. So because he grinded for 2 extra fights, he's basically off 2 encounters. So that's why it's gonna be giving him different encounters than he's really expecting. It looks like he might not know exactly what to do, but if he takes all the fights, I imagine, up to Vargas, he should be able to get to the levels he wants to.
Absolutely. And one thing, though, he'll have to be more concerned about is, as you saw, there are some enemies which inflict poison. We are trying to conserve Terra's MP, as she needs a certain amount for the next boss, but he is before a save point. Oh, and he gets a nasty pincer as well. But yeah, there is a save point between where he is now and the next boss. So he does have a sleeping bag, or should have a sleeping bag, so has the option to cure up there if necessary.
Yeah, the game gives you 2 sleeping bags right at the start, so we'll see if he's aware of that and then uses it to make sure Terra's MP is topped off.
Right now she's at 32, and you ideally want 20 to progress. Nope, he is YOLOing it. So, and he might be fine, providing he does not get poisoned and need to get rid of that status. He'll be absolutely fine. And sometimes it's just better off to head on into the fight with slightly less MP than usual, and you will still lose less time than dealing with the save point.
Really low damage roll on the auto crossbow on these Trilliums. Not only did they both live, but one of them lived through the auto crossbow and the 21 extra damage that Terra did. surprised by that.
Wow, yeah, that's not very nice at all.
I'm curious what Edgar's level is right now. Does the same thing happen again?
It might
Wonder.
not be up because he also hasn't had a battle. Have you seen him make Locke run away yet?
No, he hasn't gotten the 4-pack encounter he was looking for.
Right.
So that might be the reason, because I think off that first one, I think Edgar gets a level up. And unfortunately, since I've experienced the same thing that he's gone through, when you're off 2 encounters, the game really doesn't throw you any bones in terms of along the way finding that 4-pack encounter. I think in my situation, I had only gotten 1. I think he should have. Maybe I saw him menu for the Atlas armlet. He might have mismenued, and actually I think he might have put on his sprint shoes on Edgar instead of the Atlas armlet. So good point by Tina in chat.
Yeah,
He might be checking now.
He is too. Yeah, he did. He just because even he noticed he wasn't doing enough damage. So making sure to remove that extra pair of sprint shoes because he's gonna need those.
Yeah, I was like, this is really weird. These are you can get really low damage rolls, and Trilliums can survive, but it happens so often. Okay, here's the 1-pack that he's been looking for. So he's gonna try to run away with Locke, while still getting the XP on Terra and Edgar. So an auto crossbow and then fire on the Tusker should kill off everything here. Luckily, he did fix his error of the Atlas armlet.
No, he didn't even try. He just used it to move around some equipment, which is important, which is equipping the Mithril Pike finally on Edgar that we took from Mog earlier, and then the Mithril Blade, which was previously equipped on Edgar, and putting it on Locke. So that's going to make a big difference for this upcoming boss fight. But he does have another 4-pack, so...
There we go. That if he gets Locke to run away here, I think this should get the XP.
Oh, he's definitely trying. So, because in case we didn't explain it earlier, each character has an individual run gauge, which they have to fill up before they can run away. And it is all different sizes. And the best thing to do is to fill it up is to run at the beginning of battles before ATB is full, because you will also only run away if your ATB is also full. Run during animations, run while your ATB is full and no one else's is, so they won't run away. So, but that's okay. It looks like I think he got the levels he needed, so he did. He did. So he just proceeded into the battle. So general strategy here is to have Terra use fire and Edgar use his auto crossbow, and then once both of those commands have been entered, you set Locke to go into the front row. You do that delayed, so he will avoid any extra attacks, potential attacks from those bears on himself, but does more damage from the front row on Vargas. So Riz not too far behind though.
Yeah, Rislyeu caught up quite a bit just because Yogi had to, because he was off step, had to farm extra encounters, and he didn't get the high XP encounters that he was really hoping for. So even though Rislyeu was still a little bit behind, he's caught up quite a bit already. So this race has gotten a lot closer than it had been just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, almost to the Vargas fight himself. Looks like he has gotten his levels, so he is able to run away from the last 2 Trillium packs. We're going to see here on Yogi's screen whether he got the Doomfist skip.
I wasn't paying attention to how he was doing the ATB waiting.
No,
there's a particular way you want to do the ATB waiting, depending on when Vargas takes his first turn. And unfortunately, Sabin got really bad ATB. And he was put in a situation where Vargas didn't do an immediate Doomfist. He kind of took his time, so it took a few extra seconds, but maybe 10 seconds at most. Not really that big of a deal.
No, but I will note, Yogi is just finishing up the Vargas fight just as Rislyeu is entering the fight. So again, they have Riz has managed to catch up and close this up quite a bit.
We'll see how much of a time difference there is now. There was about a 4-minute time difference after Welk. That should have gone down quite a bit after this fight.
Absolutely. So now that they have picked up Edgar's bear of a twin, Sabin, they are going to continue to the Returner's hideout, which is the current goal. They wish to deliver Terra there with the hopes that she is going to join their cause and bring magic to their side, which they believe is the winning key. And the reason why one of the clocks was red is because we're using each of the runners' individual timers. So when a timer goes red, it means that they are behind on their time for that particular split. It went green again because they did split and are continuing on. Okay, so Sabin has shown up there.
Yeah, we'll see if how the ATB is working out for Rislyeu in terms of that Doom Fist skip. I'm curious to see what happens to Yogi in terms of. Okay, I think he should still be fine for Sabin's scenario. So the nice thing is, with Final Fantasy VI, if you do the encounter manipulation, even if you get off step because you have to do a reset during the Returner's Cave, that resets the encounters as well. So everything should be fine for him in terms of his step route after the Returner's Cave.
Absolutely, and again, it doesn't affect his ability to do the river manip. So that is for people who are just starting on this run and are not ready to memorize the walking and practice that. It's still an extraordinarily good idea to learn how to set up the seed, because not only is that really quite easy, especially with the guide. You can do the river manipulation, which is also really pretty easy, and it is worth it because by doing the river manipulation, you have a potential of getting up to 9 encounters on the river, but by doing the manipulation, you guarantee only getting the 2 mandatory fights. So that is glorious. You only need to ever do it once to know you never want to not do it.
So just looking at the time difference now, I mentioned that after Welk, there was about a 4-minute time difference between the two. It looks like there's about only a minute and a half now difference. Maybe that's 2.5 minutes. No, about a minute and a half in terms of when they completed Vargas. So a lot of time has been gained by Rislyeu, and there's still about 50 minutes left of this run left. So still anybody's game at this point.
Oh, it most certainly is. Because this tournament is Kefka and Narshe 2, Wherefore Art Gao, and it was not named that lightly. So a great source of RNG in this run is Gao, and when he chooses to grace you with his presence. So we are definitely going to see how that goes.
So you want to make sure to say no to Bannon 3 times. He asked Terra to join the Returners 3 times. You just say no to him a bunch. You get a present, and you don't have to watch a cutscene. Why would
And
you
you
ever
get
say
the
yes to him?
satisfaction of knowing you were a total jerk. Of going up to Bannon and teasing him with, maybe I'll join. No, I'm not joining. No way. Gao, we love Gao. He's wonderful.
Gao is great, except 3 out of 8. 3 out of 8 times where he doesn't show up. And
then we cry. A lot. So both of them are currently in cutscenes in the Returner's hideout. Yogi specifically is learning that the Empire is really spreading out and attacking places where they usually were allies with, and so they're splitting up. And Locke is heading in secret to South Figaro to try and figure out, get more information, because that's kind of his trade. And while everyone else is heading on the river, hopefully trying to get back to Narshe to warn them. So now we're going to see Yogi setting up both his characters for the next, his party for the next set of battles, and also doing the river manipulation, which involves resetting twice. First in the Returner's hideout itself, and then he will reset again just directly from the save menu.
So what's actually happening there in terms of the resets is actually changing the encounter seed. Whenever you do a reset, it will push it forward a little bit, and then there's depending on if you reset it for after loading a save or before loading a save, it's going to change it slightly different. So you have to reset there twice to get to a particular encounter seed that we're going to want for the rest of the run. And then it also makes setting up for this river manipulation by watching the NPC and seeing how it moves and exiting the room at a particular time to set that NPC movement value to a certain value, and that has an influence on what encounters you get into for the river.
Yeah, and again, we will only have 2, and you've seen one of them where he chose to run away as we didn't need it. But in this encounter with the pterodons, we are going to have Edgar attack and everybody else run away. And the reason for this is we just want him to get the solo amount of experience, bringing him to level 11, giving us a bit of extra safety both on the Kefka fight and the Kefka fight at the end and the upcoming Ultros fight. So that really does help. It can be skipped if you don't feel you need it, but it is a nice little bit of safety. So most people do it in a marathon or race setting.
Yeah, those Petrodons give quite a bit of XP, 900 and some change, which at this point in the run is quite a hefty amount.
Yeah, but now that he has done those 2 encounters, he is free and clear until the Ultros fight. If you do see any more encounters on his side, that means the river manipulation was not done correctly, or he may have gone in the wrong direction at one point on the river. Neither one is the case here, though. Making sure to put Edgar in the front row after the second save point, so they are set up for maximum damage against Ultros. Best boss of the game. Just saying.
So we'll see Rislyeu set up for the river manip, and he's looking for a particular encounter that the guard's standing on before he leaves. It looks like he got it to me.
Yeah.
And Yogi is just entering the Ultros fight. So again, we're going to be using ATB waiting to try to do a little bit of quote-unquote manipulation for Ultros. It's a very scripted fight. Much like the Welk fight, we want to be doing the ATB stalling on Ultros, or counter-canceling as some people call it. Just to pause a little bit to give us a little bit more time to beat up on him, so that he doesn't just tentacle Terra, then Sabin, then the whole party.
Exactly, so because that hurts quite a bit, so we want to dodge as much of that as possible. So thankfully this fight is scripted, so as long as you're doing the same things every time, the fight will react the same way every time. It's not as variable as some of these boss battles can be.
It looks like Yogi is doing it correctly. If it is done correctly, on this turn of Edgar, Ultros should go down. There we go. Very
That's
nicely
all,
done.
friends. So yeah, and with the way we currently do the Ultros strategy, you should never see the delicious morsel message and attack.
I don't think Rislyeu got the river manip.
I don't know if he did either, because when I saw it
Either.
on the on the kind of replay on the screen with the Twitch delay, it looked like he may have gone a step early, and there is quite a big window there, with that that particular character making sure they're the NPC that they're in the right spot. But if you go just that little bit too early, it's not a good scene. Did we see an extra encounter, or?
I thought I did. I'm watching it now. See if he gets into an extra encounter before Ultros. He may have actually just gone up instead of left for the first choice, which would force it wouldn't be the Pterodon fight. It would be the other encounter,
Right.
which wouldn't be the worst thing ever.
No, certainly not. So what Yogi's doing here is as soon as you're done with the Ultros fight, you get split into 3 scenarios, all of which you have to complete. And we always choose to go with Sabin's first. Oh, Yogi just off the step route, so getting an encounter in the forest and not on the grass, which is where we wanted it.
Yeah, why that happened, and he was expecting to get an encounter on the grass, but he actually missed the no encounter tile. He didn't turn quite early. If you were watching how he was stepping after getting Shadow, he missed one of those no encounter tiles, which would have forced him to get into an encounter a step earlier, which would have been on the grass. So unfortunately, that means that we're going to see that Stray Cat encounter again in the Veldt. Not the biggest deal, but when you're trying to go for super optimal times, it really does help. I didn't see what happened on Rislyeu's stream, but Terra is taking a nap.
Yes, she certainly is. Likely, sometimes it's, to me, who's a less experienced runner, sometimes it just seems like Ultros does a lot of damage to Terra, but likely there was an extra attack in there. Yeah, there definitely is.
So unfortunately, we'll see if he didn't save before Ultros. That's going to be a little unfortunate because it's going to mean his if he didn't have River Minute before, he certainly does it now.
No.
And because it took him a little bit too long to kill Ultros's third scripted attack is a tentacle on everybody, and unfortunately Bannon just doesn't have enough HP to be able to survive that. And if Bannon dies...
That's it. That's the fun mechanic they added for Bannon, and why we all really dislike Bannon quite a bit, because not much HP, and if he dies, that's it. Game over. So at least he can get his Pterodon fight here now.
Well, interestingly enough, I think I saw Edgar being at level 11 earlier.
So
he might have messed it up there, but it's actually fine. Edgar is still level 11 because when you die, even though it sends you back to the last save point, your characters actually keep all the levels they had, all the experience they had. So for the purposes of what happened there, everything should have been like, he didn't actually lose anything off of not taking that Pterodon fight.
I think the reason why we want Exocyte versus Stray Cat is Stray Cat, I think, is just a nastier fight. We don't want that encounter at all.
Yeah, so the main thing we're trying to get is we're trying to get single enemy formations just because they tend to be easy to run from. So a 3 enemy formation, like the Beaker Stray Cat fight or whatever it was, the Stray Cat plus something else.
I think it was 2 Beakers.
Okay. It takes a little bit longer to run from, and you know you're going to see it again in the Veldt, and it has the potential of being a pincer attack, which we really want to avoid. Stray Cat, in terms of a rage, is actually one of the best rages in the game, if you can manage to get it on Gao, but would take quite a substantial amount of time, and it just isn't good enough. Casually, though, I would definitely recommend getting Stray Cat as a rage.
And we did just see about a minute ago the fight in Doma with Cyan, and that's where we took advantage of his retort ability, which is a counter. We changed the battle speed back to 1 to speed up the battle, because the faster the enemy attacks Cyan, the sooner he will counter and kill him with using retort. Instead, we see General Leo, who is one of the more honorable people, if not the most honorable people is in the Empire, who is unfortunately being sent away, leaving only Kefka in charge, which I'm sure everyone understands how bad an idea that is. And now it's time for Ultros Take 2! While I'm happy to see him, this is not the scenario in which we wish to see him.
So let's watch a little more carefully what happens here now. The first bit of ATB waiting you want to do is on Edgar's second turn of attack. You should be ATB waiting with Terra and doing a fire immediately after. This fire actually performs the counter cancel or ATB stalling on Ultros because it forces Ultros to counter attack Terra. So it buys us a little bit of time, but it looks like he didn't do it quite right because Ultros immediately took a turn afterwards. That's probably what happened on the first time, and I think what happened is he didn't ATB wait quite long enough with Terra. He might have been a little bit too slow to get to Terra's menu, but we did see a crit from Edgar.
Yeah.
Hopefully that'll be enough damage.
I hope so, because I believe you're also supposed to weight trick with Edgar for the Aura Bolt that Sabin does, but he just really straight attacked instead.
Yeah, you really want that second Aura Bolt to be ATB weighted. Okay, but
good.
Luckily he pulled off enough damage.
Yes.
We got through it.
Just definitely. So that's fantastic. He is going to progress, which is lovely. So we are doing a series of fights here on Yogi's screen. He did have 2 encounters with Kefka, which were literally a joke. You hit him once and he mocks you and runs away. Leading to this fight that Yogi's just finishing up, where the strategy is just fight the 2 dudes in front, throw the air lancet, which you picked up from the returner's hideout, at one of them, and use a blitz, either either pummel, which is slightly faster, or Aura Bolt on the second one. So Kefka, being in charge, decides that if he likes grape Kool-Aid, everybody should love grape Kool-Aid, especially these people in Doma. So he sends it flowing down the river to share with everybody. Unfortunately, Doma really does not enjoy grape Kool-Aid at all. So you will note that while we have been renaming most of the characters down to 1 character, that was not done with Shadow. And the reason being is he only has 3 text boxes worth of text. And so it just does not save you enough time to make it worth it. It is generally faster, or basically as fast, to just mash on the accept command and let him remain full name Shadow.
So
no, go ahead.
I was going to say, because of Rislyeu not being quite on the right seed, I believe due to the death, he, got an encounter he was really hoping he didn't get into. It was a 4-pack encounter. It happened to be a back attack. He was taking the steps as if he were on the correct seed. So we're not going to know exactly what we're going to see in terms of his encounters as the run progresses. We don't really know what Velt encounters he's going to have. Actually, I take that back. He probably got that encounter because we were ahead a few extra encounters due to having to do the river twice and the second river not being manipulated. And all in all, we're still not really going to know what encounters we're going to get. He's going to have to go through.
That is correct. So we're just going to have to see how it goes, and he's going to have to hope even more so than regular that he gets lucky in the Veld.
Yeah, the train is, I'm probably a little worried about the train, just because there's a lot of encounters in the train that can be particularly nasty.
Even when step routing, yeah.
When you're step routing, it's still a little scary, but if you're off step and you happen to get a 4-pack Whisper encounter or a 3-pack Bomb encounter, those are the scary encounters because they can pincer you. Bombs have bleeds, which really hurts. It'll be really scary, and let's kind of cross our fingers and hope a little bit that Rislyeu won't have to deal with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is now Riz's turn to fight to be the worst nightmare to this poor soldier, the leader, as it were. While Cyan on Yogi's screen just does what he wants, and rarely what we want him to do. Again, we want him to do just regular attacks. preferably on the regular grunt, not the cadet, but any regular attack is still better than dispatch because dispatch is slow, so that is not ideally what we want here. Taking a bit of downtime to move around some of his inventory, which is always a great idea. There's not a huge amount of inventory management that even needs to be done. Mostly it's moving junk items out of the way because you just get a lot of things you don't even need for this particular run. But making space at the top for some items you're going to get and moving just 1 or 2 items up near the top. And after defeating those soldiers, they're like, what's a better way to get out of here? Oh, we know, stealing Magitech armor. So that's exactly what they do. But unfortunately, they want to send Magitech armor after you because they really don't appreciate you stealing those. So another fantastic time to rearrange the inventory. Also, I hear rumors that one of the things you have to do to validate your run is ensure you have the rainbow beams, which is, there are 3 different beams which you can use in your Magitech armors. You have to use 1 of each, which Yogi does not appear to be doing. But that's okay. The most important thing is defeating the soldiers, as they will all die in 1 hit from any of the beams, but we'd rather a color explosion, wouldn't we?
That's definitely the hottest speed tech of Final Fantasy VI.
Right? And there's a lot of really cool speed tech, but that rainbow beam, cannot miss it. Oh, getting a very nice preemptive, though, on the Magitech. While Riz fights his own scripted battles with Kefka. Wait, he says. Does Kefka look like a waiter to you? Answer now in chat. And if he is a waiter, where would he work? I will answer that you can duplicate your weapons in Final Fantasy IV. I cannot say for sure whether you can or cannot by some magic in this game, but you can do that in Final Fantasy IV.
Yes, you can.
Oh,
so the sketch glitch, which there's a category of this game that does heavily rely on the sketch glitch, can do wondrous things to the game. It can dupe your items. It can give you a whole bunch of weird status ailments, like turn everybody into Magitech armor. It can warp you to the world of ruin. It can do a lot of amazing things. It's essentially you're corrupting the game's memory. It can also do some not so friendly things to the game if you don't do it properly.
It's one of the reasons they did choose to patch it out of the game eventually. Ooh, Yogi getting a not very nice pincer here. You cannot run away unaided from pincer attacks, so he is forced to kill one side, and you always choose the smaller side, of course. And thankfully, where these are all undead, you can just use a potion to one-shot these ghosts, but it does take time, and you are taking damage. Now, what I didn't see, I think, yeah, this was after the recovery spring, meaning he did take damage. He is not going to want to have taken, but could be worse. See how his train goes.
Yeah, he's on step. He did get an extra encounter before Doma, but that should only affect the Velt. But as long as he still plays the Phantom Train properly, he should expect to get all the encounters he's hoping for, which again isn't nearly as bad as Rislyeu is probably going to have a little bit of a harder time in the Phantom Train because we really don't know what encounters he's going to have.
No, certainly not. So, and again, as mentioned earlier by Takaze, these encounters are just not very nice. Even when you're on step route, they even the singular bombs, I've had it happen where they just each use the blaze on you, and it's extraordinarily nasty. So everyone send your RNG wishes to Riz. We want him to do very nicely on the river. Now, generally, the strategy going through this train is to not dodge around the ghosts, as you want to stay on step route. However, Within the first two cars, you do want to farm for this extra still going encounter, as it is better than what the encounter would be in the next car. So he did have a few steps leeway there. But after
Yeah.
this, you do want to just stand and wait for those ghosts to get out of your way.
So if you are doing encounter manipulation and you don't burn those extra steps, you'll get a 4-pack whisper outside of just a few steps outside that second car. And that has a potential to be a pincer attack. And not only do you get it in the train, but also if you're on manipulation, you're guaranteed to see that fight again in the belt. So it's another reason why we don't we burn steps to avoid it once in the train and again in the belt.
So while Riz does his, the last, I believe, of his mandatory fights. No, sorry, it's the first, I think. No, second one. I'm just gonna guess numbers until I'm right. So, so he's
The fifth
finishing.
one.
Yes, I knew it. So he is doing those fights with Cyan, trying, of course, not to get in between Cyan and the soldiers, because you will get knocked out of the way and have to walk back up to trigger this encounter. So yes, it is the third one he is in currently. Yogi Sabin is currently continuing to have great ideas and decided, let's test right here, right now, if I can carry us all and jump across train cars. Thankfully for everybody, he is capable of doing that, because if there's one thing Sabin's really good at, it's being strong. So, it did not stop the ghost from following them, though, so he has to disconnect those train cars, and thankfully that switch is used again to open his path to the next car. So, really handy, I gotta say. Though that back attack's not quite so handy.
Yeah, Yogi hasn't had the best Phantom Train section. He's had 2 pincers from the 3-pack ghost. He's got a back attack here. I'd really hate to see what would happen if he wasn't on encounter manipulation.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've definitely had the train where you're on manip and it just says no. Yeah, he decided to dodge past this.
Well, that could cost him because taking an extra step can potentially force another encounter. Before he gets to the falls, it's going to be grasshoppers, and that's going to be one of those encounters that you're going to see again in the Veld if you happen to get it.
I did not know that, and it would explain why I always get the grasshoppers on the Veld. They're really not nice because they have the potential to berserk your characters, and when you're trying to not hit Gao, so he will join your party, that is particularly dangerous.
The ill happen, so you want to make sure to after you burn those steps in the second car to get that still going fight, you want to make sure to not take any extra encounter after that. So if I'm understanding correctly, we're going to see that grasshopper fight right before he gets to the waterfall. I forget if it's 1 step you're allowed to take or 2 steps you're allowed to take. We'll see what happens. Stay tuned.
Will. I will note Riz is getting the rainbow beam, so go Riz. Now we're gonna see if Yogi really validates his run. So, nope, he's not even
evil
trying.
too.
He got the evil tooth, but he didn't even try it anyways. So how you actually kill this boss is using the Phoenix down, because he's undead, so he is not immune to that, and it is insta-kill. What we like to do, though, with Sabin is to suplex the train to validate your run, because a lot of enemies are made immune to the suplex, usually floating and flying enemies and such, for obvious reasons. You know, it's hard to suplex something that's already in the air. However, the train was not given that immunity, so you can actually suplex the train. But, the train can use an ability which you saw called Evil Toot, which inflicts random status ailments on your party, and sometimes makes that impossible. But I will note that Yogi was already not even attempting the suplex, even before the, that likely he feels he is very behind due to his unfortunate train and some of the other things he's had happen, so he was likely trying to just save every second he could.
Yeah, so if he did go for the blitz, because Saban got imped, it would have failed, but
He
he already had put his selection in. He doesn't get a bye.
I
Everybody
know
should
that, like,
give him a bit of a hard time.
I consider it a pass if you have tried it, but the game makes it impossible, like in such a situation where you get imped, where it doesn't happen. I consider that valid, but no, he just chose not to. So we definitely wish him good luck, but his run is not valid.
Now, this is where I will fully admit I never go for suplexes when I am trying to go fast.
I always
Suplexes
go
are
for.
reserved purely for races where both runners have agreed to do so,
Mm.
or marathon runs when the donation has been met.
Very nice. No, I will admit I'm one of those runners who suplex every time because worth it. Go for the swag.
That's 10 seconds you're never going to get back.
I'm okay with that. Worth it. Until I officially lose a race just because I suplexed the train, I will always do it. So what Yogi is doing here is you have a mandatory wait time. There is a timer going where until that timer has clocked out and finished going through its countdown, you literally cannot progress. So it is a perfect time to equip some relics, to organize your inventory, and get your memory cursor in the correct spot for some upcoming things. So he made sure to do that, and as you saw, even after the menu, he still had to sit and wait. And again, that's the timer. You can't advance that, so we just use it. So yeah, you know that really nasty 4-pack Whisper encounter that we talked about earlier? Riz has unfortunately got it.
Yeah, so that means that well, actually, he might not see it again in the belt because he's on a different encounter seed, which affects what you fight in the belt. But luckily he didn't get a pincer attack, which is just thankful because that's a particularly hard fight to get out of if you get pincered.
That is correct. Now, Yogi is doing the next kind of section in which he is going to skip the next boss because we just don't have time for that. We're jumping down waterfalls, we got things to do. So we're taking advantage of the retort glitch with Cyan, or the properties of retort. So we are purposely attempting to kill Cyan. For safety, Saban has been equipped with the True Knight though, so if you get, say, a Cyan down to critical HP before he has been killed, then you must use Saban to finish him off, otherwise Saban will defend the attack. So you kill Cyan, you resurrect him with a Phoenix down, so you have to make sure you have 2 of them, one for the Phantom Train and one for this fight. You wait until it is Saban's turn, and you go to the second sword tech, which is retort, and then you initiate a suplex blitz. And we mentioned earlier that some enemies are immune to that, and Piranha is one of those. But the game somehow sees that as an attack, and Saban still counters it, and due to the setup. And since there was both a physical attack and a magic attack both on the same enemy at the same time, it just glitches out the enemy AI and the defeating AI. So it just finishes that fight and ends everything, the whole process. So you just jump to the next cutscene.
Yeah,
Which
if you're
is
familiar with that fight, you're normally how that fight works casually. You kill a set of piranhas, they spawn more piranhas, and keep spawning piranhas until about a minute of battle time has passed. And then instead of spawning piranhas, it'll spawn Rislyeu, which is like a boss. But by glitching out Cyan there, and even though the suplex misses, it still like considers as registering as a physical attack for that glitch that Nitara mentioned. It skips the AI of the piranha that says, "Okay, spawn some more enemies," and it just immediately ends the fight.
It is very nice. If you happen to mess up the first fight and kill both the piranhas, or don't kill both the piranhas in the correct way and get another set of piranhas, you can attempt the glitch again. We have a Yogi. He didn't cure up Cyan before he progressed on the Veld. So after he got killed, so he used a tent to make sure he's alive, because Gao will not show up if he is dead.
good call to use that tent. If he had not revived Cyan in some way, he was actually out at Phoenix Downs because you only get 2 of them unless you get unlucky. These fights would take a little bit longer, and he'd have to remember to heal up in Mobliz. There's an inn there, but there's also a bed that you can sleep in. Is that another 4-pack whisper? It looks like it. So here's that encounter that Yogi now sees. If you remember, he had misstepped before Doma, and he fought this encounter instead of the single beaker encounter. Really, the only kind of downside to that is it takes a little bit longer to run away from this fight.
But now that he has arrived in Moblitz, he is going to buy the ever-important item of the dried meat, which is the item you need to give to Gao in order to recruit him successfully. So, Riz has reached the ghost train, though, so let us see what he does. Oh, well, he knows he's behind, and he doesn't care. He is suplexing that train. See, that's what you do here. You suplex.
Yogi getting a little lucky. Gao showing up on the very first fight he's able to.
Yeah, so there is a 5 out of 8 chance for Gao showing up in any battle, or almost any battle, which is eligible, which, falls into certain criteria, and that's not something we can manipulate. So if you're on step route, there are 2 fights between Moblitz and the cave you're heading to. You hope to have him show up on one of those 2, otherwise you do have to grind an encounter. Or multiple encounters if you're truly unlucky.
I don't actually know what the highest number of fights somebody's taken.
I would love to know what that number is.
My personal best is 6. It took me 6 encounters for Gao to show up.
Mine was something similar, but I don't actually know offhand how many times. But I think it might have actually have been the same run where I had the 7-turn Welk fight. I may have also had like 5 to 6 fights waiting for...
Mega's pointing out 8 encounters for him.
Nice. And by nice, I mean terrible.
I'm going to actually pull out a calculator to do a little bit of math on that.
I love math. Do it. So yeah, there's a reason this tournament is called Wherefore Art Gao, because our friend does not like to show up sometimes, but we always love those runs where he just shows up immediately. Yeah, that's fair, because there are certain formations or certain parties that he will not show up, certain battles where you won't get Gao. If one of your party members is dead, he won't show up. If you get a pincer attack, Gao won't show up. So, yeah, those are all things you hope to not have. And guys, get your kappas ready. It is that time.
So I did just do the math on the 8 encounter for Gao to show up. It's about a 0.04% chance.
Nice.
Never lucky.
Nope. For him to show up first time, or for him?
For it to be, I guess technically that I calculated for Gao to show up at the 9th fight. So if it was the 8th fight that Gao showed up, I'd have to readjust the math.
Nice. Yeah, it's not very nice at all. So Riz has escaped the Phantom Train and is going for his own waterfall dive. Not getting any encounters on the way though, so that's very nice. Yogi getting the bomb. Someone set him up the bomb. You're welcome.
I think he set himself up the bomb.
He did, and it's not very nice. So
it is nice.
Yeah, he did. Actually, it is. It's quick to run away from. So he doing a safety save outside of the trench, because the trench is another area of the game which does not always like to treat us very kindly.
Yeah, if he is watching Rislyeu stream, he knows that he's quite a bit ahead. The main thing he needs to avoid is dying and then having to go back really far to reload a save. So he's probably going to take a few extra safety saves on anything that could potentially get him killed, no matter the chance of it.
Absolutely. So you went with Gao because he told you he had a shiny which would help you, and you're like, okay, I totally trust this young boy who seems to live out here. And thankfully you did, because he handed you a helmet which the three of you are going to use to breathe underwater, which is incredibly handy considering apparently this trench will bring them closer to the destination of Narshe. So, for all that Gao has been living on the veldt for however long he has been, he's a little scared to jump into the water, but that's okay. He does eventually join the party.
And on Rislyeu stream, we do see the successful Rislyeu skip. It's pretty easy to mess up, and it can definitely cost a little bit of time if you do mess it up, and potentially cost you to reload a save if you happen to have to fight Rislyeu and then don't fight him properly. He's a very scary boss. He has an attack called El Nino that will probably just kill you if you happen to see it.
Yeah, it's just not even worth it. You're definitely much more, you're better off trying to get the second set of piranhas and trying again. If you can, if you don't have a Phoenix down, and weren't able to do that first part, which I had happened to me once, then you just have to sit and wait and hope for the best. So let's see how Yogi's trench goes. Making it through the first half, no problem, but he is making sure to heal up. Oh, he is healing up Cyan. Generally speaking, most of us choose not to do that because every one of our characters has an individual run percentage, like a run gauge they have to fill up to be allowed to run away, and Cyan's is the longest, so with him dead, it is faster to run away, though it is a little less safe. So he's just choosing to be safe in this situation, and honestly, if he is watching this at all, he knows he has enough time that he can manage. He can afford that bit of safety.
He probably wants to play as safe as possible, just to ensure not dying.
Absolutely, and why wouldn't
Definitely good strategy from him, as for anybody really, that you know you have a substantial lead, just do everything to keep that lead.
Yes, you do.
Even if you have to take 5 seconds here, 5 seconds there.
Okay, Riz picking up his dried meat as well, so let's hope Gao treats him as nicely as he did Yogi.
We'll see what encounters he gets into. So, because he is off the encounter seed that he wants to be on, there's gonna be random encounters for all intents and purposes. So hopefully he gets quick fights and Gao shows up early. As I say that, of course, Gao doesn't show up.
Nope, but again, he does have the encounters until he reaches the cave for it to not be a time loss, which did not happen. So he gets to farm encounters, which is the ultimate dream. Not Kappa. So Yogi finishing up Sabin's scenario with buying his smoke bombs, which are going to be incredibly useful for the next two scenarios, and is exactly why we do Sabin's scenario first. We want those smoke bombs.
So you see on Rislyeu's stream, he got a pincer attack, which is essentially that Lobo's Scarred fight is guaranteed to be a pincer attack, and pincer attacks can't have Gao in them. So really unfortunate that he got that particular encounter when he's really looking for Gao.
Moving Locke down to the second position and equipping him with sprint shoes and just items, because as mentioned earlier, he left with nothing. He just took nothing with him because I guess he felt it would make him slow. We don't question. Having a bit of trouble here getting the skip, where Locke is trying to sneak past this guard, but third time's the charm and getting it. The importance of Locke being in the second position is that there is a fight which you can get in the South Figaro cave, and I believe you said earlier, Takaze, that there was a bear involved.
I forget what they're called, but yeah, it's the bear. If you get pincered attack and the bears have a chance to do a gouge ability, it's a really nasty. And if you're in the second position, gouge facing the bear, so that the gouge will do less damage. But if you're in the first position, gouge is going to be facing away from the bear, and that causes extra damage when you get attacked. But I'm not too sure if that fight is going to show up. No, actually, he's still on step. So it should be the next fight that he gets into that encounter. But whether or not it's a pincer, we'll see.
Nope, he is safe. Well,
Oh, no, I was wrong. Maybe the next encounter.
we're just gonna keep it every time. We're like, no, it's the next one. No, it's the next one.
See, I get a little confused because I'm mostly used to glitchless, and we actually do a lock scenario after Terra, so I'm trying to think of where the encounter shows up
here's
specifically. There it is. Okay.
That's fair. Hey, I wouldn't even been able to tell you where that encounter was. So you're still ahead of me, but using the smoke bombs that we picked up in Saban's scenario and using them to great effect. And the Thunder Rod room, Elmagus tells us. So the hardest part about Locke's scenario once you've done the clip is simply making it through. But usually, especially with smoke bombs, that is not an issue. And you show up to this boss fight and somebody, who knows who, they don't have a name, is talking to you, but nobody is there. So we don't really question what's going on with Locke. These things happen. But instead, we're going to use the Thunder Rod we just picked up, which, as you can see, is incredibly powerful. Skipping magic defense and doing max damage, and I think it's also the second level spell as well, but with all of that combined, it does an excessive amount of damage, so he doesn't need his ghost friend anyways.
I almost saw Yogi do a normal attack with Locke there.
Yeah.
That would have been interesting.
Yeah, that certainly would have been unfortunate. So, but on to the last scenario, which is a Terra scenario, while Riz has finally recruited Gao and is getting his shiny. So it is next his turn for the river. Again, he has to worry. He definitely wants to be using those smoke bombs on the river because Bannon and his very little HP, if he dies here, it's still game over. That has not changed.
If I remember correctly, there are 15 encounters, assuming you're on step and on the right encounter seed. 15 encounters in Locke scenario and Terra scenario. So as long as you have at least 15 smoke bombs, you're good. Or you could buy it a little bit less and hope that you get a few preemptives.
Yeah, and if it's a preemptive, it is faster to just run away than it is to use a smoke bomb. So, and chances are you usually get at least one, but no guarantees. So let's see how Riz's river goes, hopefully quite well.
So with Yogi almost being done here, I think the only thing that really could cost him a good chunk of time is, I guess, one, if he doesn't skip Rider, but mainly if he happens to have an unfortunate event at Kefka. That's going to cost him a few minutes. So we'll see what happens. With a time like his PB being a 127 something, he should be able to get the Kefka fight without any problems, but in a race, anything can happen.
That is correct.
And I didn't see if he bought mithril pikes in Nikia. So he may opt to go into the Moogle room and pick up a rune edge, or you buy a second pike in Nikia. That's typically the alternative. Okay, so he probably bought that second pike in Nikia, and he probably already equipped it onto Edgar. I wasn't paying attention. Just to give a little bit of extra damage on the Kefka fight.
Smoke bombs are particularly beautiful when you get things like back attacks or pincers. You definitely love to have them there.
Especially with how slow Bannon is at running away. He's one of those characters that have the slowest run meter build-up. I don't even really know if we have a term for it. Run stat. A hidden run stat that the game doesn't tell you.
So into Locke's scenario here for Riz. So apparently he still had the air lancet left, so that got equipped onto Locke. So trying to get it here. The timings on this can be a little precise because you have to both move very quickly, but if you move a little too quickly and don't buffer for that guard, you move before he's ready.
Yeah, you want to move into position and you have to hold a moment and then pause. And then as you're coming out of the pause, you're both trying to move into the same tile at the same time. And then you're standing on top of each other and then you're able to move past him. Something you could do with and is done to avoid other event tiles and other categories of the run, with the exception of glitchless, because we consider that to be a glitch. You can do it off of pauses. You can also do it off of coming out of an encounter. As you're coming out of an encounter, sometimes you'll clip through an NPC. You see that happen quite often in the Phantom Train, clipping through some of the ghosts, which makes sense because ghosts are incorporeal. I mean, they don't have bodies. You can just walk right through them, right?
That makes total sense. I don't see why they block you in the first place.
It's not a glitch.
Not at all. We will classify absolutely anything we can as not a glitch. No reason, though.
So who's this white fellow on Yogi's stream?
Apparently, it is the ever wonderful, super powerful General Kutan. We may have been introduced to her at the beginning. She was in the same party as Mog when we fought the Marshal. Very nice of her to join us again, out of nowhere, following Locke around.
With being a general, she's gotta be really strong and have really good stats.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely. And by that I mean absolutely not. Unfortunately, the way this game stores character data is that Locke and Terra are safe, but all the rest of the character slots are filled up with those Moogles we used in that first big battle. And as you name each character, that slot information gets overwritten with the new character information. But we didn't go and see the character who Kutan is replacing, nor did we name her. So instead, we get General Kutan, who still has all of the stats and equipment of her original fight person, and unfortunately, that also means that we cannot change her equipment at all. Her equipment menu is locked. Same with her relics. Really not helpful at all. Riz now on to the last scenario, Terra. So again, it's not very long, so Still quite a bit of difference between the two, but he shouldn't be too much longer. Yogi, again, doing everything he can to be safe at this point because he has such a lead. So that is one of the spots where I highly recommend you safety save, if nowhere else. There's a few spots like that, but I definitely always recommend that spot because Kefka can be really quite nasty if you don't get his fight correctly.
Yeah, I think the Kefka fight is a pretty good ending for a short category like this because it's pretty tough to do when you're first learning, and if you fail it, there's a chance that Kefka just decides to wipe the floor with you. So they're going to be doing more ATB waiting in a particular way, have to make sure to get to Sabin's turn quickly to get off Arbolt quickly, and of course have prepped the characters beforehand to make sure they're have the right equipment on for maximum damage. And much like the martial section that we saw 10 or so minutes in the game, this is very similar. We're just going to be waiting for the guards to pass. And then this last encounter, the rider, we just want to move at a certain time to make sure we can walk past him without triggering the fight. Let's see how Yogi does with the Kefka encounter. He's not opting to take Sabin's turn first. That likely will mean he's going to miss out on Sabin getting 2 Aura Bolts in before Kefka's second turn. We'll see how he reacts to that, though.
Again, even if Kefka does get to his third turn off, there is a chance he won't do the absolutely devastating full party attack of Ice 2, but it's generally something you do not want to risk.
Even if that does happen, Sabin does have enough HP and resist to be able to live through it. Looks like he still was able to. I think I saw a crit from Edgar in there. So we have a final time of. I actually don't have Speedruns Live pulled up.
I do. Hold on a second. Setting up the other race, which is happening immediately after this. So the official time in SRL is 1 hour, 30 minutes, and 52 seconds. So GG to Yogi. That was a fabulous run. Pulling it through even with some problems there. Really a good job. So just goes to show how much this run, even though it is a fairly newbie safe run, it can just really troll you sometimes. So GG, very good job, Baby Rage.
We still have Rislyeu on the left-hand side, so let's see how he finishes off the run. Just finishing up Terra Scenario, and then going to be entering the Kefka fight after a little bit of cutscenes.
So we're going to swap the music back over because as much as I like the victory music, oopsie, let's actually use the correct players. I'm getting set up. So bye-bye victory music. Hello Narshe music.
And if you're just joining us, the reason why Rislyeu fell a little bit behind is he struggled a little bit at Ultras and took a death there, which set him back quite a bit, and also had a little bit of struggle with Wilk. And unfortunately, due to Ultras kind of getting thrown off, it threw off his encounter, what encounter seat he was on, and really just made it a bit of a struggle for the rest of the run. But sometimes the game can be a little mean to you, and you just have to react the best way you can. And I think he's done a pretty good job, despite the two mistakes that he did with Welk and Ultros.
Absolutely. Honestly, he's done a fantastic job. It can be incredibly discouraging to have something like this happen in a run, and the fact that it happened so early, and then again with Ultros, to pick up and keep going, it's incredible. And it's again, anyone who's done this sort of tournament just knows how discouraging that can be. So it's going really well here, and Riz is going to finish up, and really with not that terrible a time considering all that's happened. And considering we are doing the Swiss rounds, he will still have a chance to progress because we're still early days. Anyone, I believe, who is 4 wins and 0 losses will automatically progress. But of the people who get 3 wins and 1 loss, the people with the top times will progress, and the rest will go through a qualifier, I think is how they're going to do it. So even with 1 loss, there is still a chance of progressing. So I would not worry about it too much at this point. It's just more important to get completed runs.
With his PB, as long as he's fairly consistent, I would imagine his second round goes much better than the first one, and it gives him extra since he'll have probably 2 weeks until the second rounds. I'm not too sure when they start. You have quite a bit of time to make sure you're well practiced, just to get better and better. Maybe drop that PB down even a little bit more.
Okay, so he is not doing any sort of safety saves. Riz at this point is like, what can I lose? Let's do it.
Yeah, go fast. Gotta do it.
Fast is important, so just whipping through that menu. And you can see just by how everything Riz is doing, he is a very experienced runner here, and especially of this category. So it's just sometimes things go wrong, whether it be the game or nerves. So it'll be definitely interesting to see what happens here for the last section. So walking right through again, working to dodge and just generally not encounter anything. Good chance for just shoring up the menu here. You can't lose any more time. So.
Well, I think you had forgotten to put the rune edge on Edgar during the battles. A little bit of optimization you can do there just to equip weapons and shields.
And better to take
during battle.
Yeah, and definitely better to take the seconds to do it now than to not have that extra damage in the Kefka battle.
So pretty good ATB from Sabin here. He's able to get Sabin a turn off first. As long as he does the ATB waiting properly, he should be able to get Sabin's second turn before that second turn from Kefka. And that's generally when you do that, you kind of know you've done the fight well, and you should be able to kill Kefka before that third turn. I was really hoping to see Royal Shock there from Edgar.
Oh, I always love it when you see the desperation attacks. It's beautiful. Just finish off the.
Have a chance to see it, I think. Royal Shock.
Nope.
Oh no, Go, come on.
We do not. So, but that does mean he is done with an official SRL time of 1:37.24. So congratulations to Rislyeu. He did a fabulous job recovering considering all that was happening in that run. Now we're not going to keep this going. We are going to immediately start getting ready for the next one. So I'm going to transition off here. So congratulations to everyone. But we have another race coming up right at 9. I apologize in advance. There is going to probably be a 5-minute delay because it takes a bit of tech to get this going. But we will get us going as soon to 9 as possible. So I am going to give you guys some wonderful music to listen to in the meantime. And both Takaze and I will be back for our third race in a row. So get ready for more exciting and more exciting races. And GG to both of our runners. Whoopsie. See you shortly.